Welcome to my garden, to the GinGee GoodEarth show. Hunger as a fox, help hunger. Hungry as a fox, help hunger. Again, welcome to the GinGee GoodEarth show. Your host, Ginger Lily, Production Liberty 3, Part F, January 18th, celebrating Martin Luther King Day, USA, take love. So today, I just want to get right to the book, Universal History of the United States of America, which I'll be starting on page 190, and I'm just going to read through, and you can enjoy the picture show and enjoy the whole evening. So it's dark here in Pennsylvania, and I'm going to get started. So I welcome all of you, and I'm reading starting on page 190, Universal History of the United States of America. On the 15th, all operations were suspended by the excessive rains that fell, but on the 16th, General Stark was joined by the Berkshire militia under Colonel Simons, and he detached Nichols to take the post in the rear of the enemy. On the left, Colonel Hendrick to take the post in the rear of his right, to be supported by Colonels Hubbard and Stickley. Still further on the right, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, General Stark commenced an attack upon the enemy. Strongly entrenched and supported by 2 field pieces, the attack became general and was valiantly supported on both sides. The Indians fled, the Germans were overpowered and forced from their entrenchments and put to flight. The militia, flushed with successes of the day, abandoned the pursuit and gave themselves up to plunder. At this eventful moment, Lieutenant Colonel Breyman joined Colonel Baum with a reinforcement. They rallied to the charge and renewed the combat. Colonel Warner led on his regiment of Continentals at this critical moment and supported the action until the militia could recover their order and advance to the charge. The action soon became general and continued through the day. The Germans again gave way and secured their retreat under cover of the night, leaving their artillery, baggage, and with 200 slain and 700 prisoners, among whom was Colonel Baum. This was important action and proved ruinous to General Burgoyne. This action was highly applauded, and a brigadier's commission was made out for Colonel Stock in Continental service. This success gave fresh courage to the Americans, and the public pulse beat high with expectation. General Gates now took command of the army, and the militia joined the army with alacrity. On the rear of the British army was an American force under General Lincoln, and on the 18th, General Brown destroyed the British stores at Lake George, releasing a number of American prisoners. Successful operations were also commenced against Ticonderoga and Skenesborough, now Whitehall. General Burgoyne had crossed the Hudson and finally took post at Stillwater, but 3 miles from General Gates. On the 18th of September, General Gates detached about 3,000 men to offer the enemy battle, but he declined the combat. On the 19th, the scouting parties of two armies commenced a skirmishing that led to general action, which continued through the day, and was supported with great zeal and intrepid bravery. Night closed the scene, and the two generals drew off their armies to protect their camps and waited with impatience the returning day. In the action, the American loss was about 300, and that of the English was 500. The American strength was now about 7,000, not including about 2,000 under General Lincoln, who were then at Bennington. The Indian allies of Great Britain were deserting the standard of General Burgoyne since the late contest, and 4 of the 6 nations favored the cause of America and furnished 150 warriors. The troops under General Lincoln now added to the force under General Gates and revived the spirits of the army. Until the 7th of October, the armies were within common shot, and skirmishes were frequent and severe. The armies were harassed and alarmed. The situation of Burgoyne was becoming critical, and he applied to Sir Henry Clinton for relief. The latter had just received 2,000 men from Europe and commenced operations by capture of West Point, a strong fortress on the Hudson. He was then enabled to clear the obstructions on the river and leave a free passage for his shipping. Of all this, General Burgoyne had intelligence, but too late to render him any service. As General Burgoyne determined on a retreat, he sent forward a strong party on one side, while he headed another supported by General Fraser, and on a contest was commenced immediately and lasted through the day. Victory perched on the American standard, and they were successful at all points. General Arnold fought desperately and received a wound in the action. General Fraser and Sir James Clark were mortally wounded. And then there's a little star asterisk. In the heat of the action, Colonel Morgan, the future hero of the Battle of Cowpens, selected several of his sharpshooters and pointing them to the British officer who appeared most conspicuously active in his duty at the head of his division, mounted upon an iron gray charger, thus addressed them: "That gallant officer is General Fraser. I admire and respect him, but it is necessary that he should die. Take your station in that wood and do your duty." It is unnecessary to add that General Fraser soon fell mortally wounded. So he had a horse that was an iron gray charger. General Fraser and Sir James Clark were mortally wounded, and the latter became a prisoner, General Burgoyne changing his position in the night, and the Americans spoiled the British camp. The British now expected a momentary attack and were under arms all the day on the 8th, and at sunset the last honors were paid to the remains of the much lamented Fraser. On the 9th, the English army was so closely invested that the commander resolved on a retreat to Saratoga, which is Saratoga Springs. This was effected with no other loss than that of his hospital of sick and wounded, which he was compelled to abandon to the mercy of General Gates, who did honor to his character in the display of his benevolent feelings in behalf of the sufferers. In Saratoga Springs, the Pittsburgh Victorian Gibson Girls did a 3-day performance and also were in attendance at the Victorian Ball in the Civil War Ballroom. Back in 1997, and my dress was a lemon meringue color dress, and my friend Irene Goodnight, lead singer, she was in a lime meringue dress, and so she was key lime pie and I was lemon meringue. And we danced at the ball, and the Civil War orchestra played, and we had such a grand evening. And that was Saratoga Springs, New York. Woohoo! And we performed the play Bearing Fruit, where Nellie Bly, 26 years older than Evelyn Nesbit. The play was all about conversation and tea with Nellie Bly and Evelyn Nesbit. And Charles Danny Gibson was a guest. And the original Charles Danny Gibson's brother attended the play in Saratoga Springs, New York at the Adelphi Hotel. Great memory. I have pictures throughout my picture show on that too. This was effected with no other loss than that of his hospital of sick and wounded, which he was compelled to abandon to the mercy of General Gates, who did honor to his character in the display of his benevolent feelings in behalf of the sufferers. General Burgoyne now perceived that all the passes in his rear were strongly guarded, and that further retreat was next to impossible. In this difficulty he called a council on the 13th. While the council was deliberating, an 18th-pound shot crossed the table, and they resolved unanimously to propose terms with General Gates. The proposals of General Gates were rejected, and General Burgoyne then set in terms on which the capitulation was initially and finally made. The news of the capture in the Highlands is said to have arrived at this juncture, which led General Burgoyne to hesitate in expectation of relief from Sir Henry Clinton. General Gates, seizing the critical moment, drew up his army in battle array and sent in a flag demanding a reply in 10 minutes. The responsibility was great, and Burgoyne felt it. The treaty was signed and returned in due time. The whole British army marched out of their lines, deposited their arms, and became prisoners of war. General Gates marched in under the tune of Yankee Doodle and took quite a procession. General Gates ordered supplies to be issued to the British army, who were destitute, and the solemn scene was closed. Such and so various are the scenes of life and the fates of men, such and so fickle is the fortune of war, but firm and unshaken is the providence of God. Wisdom and might and strength are his. Sir Henry Clinton detached Sir James Wallace and General Vaughan with a flying squadron carrying 3,600 troops to penetrate, if possible, to the camp of Burgoyne, or make a diversion in his favor. But learning the situation of General Burgoyne at Esopus on the 13th, they set fire to the village and consumed it. Had they proceeded to Albany, they might have destroyed the place with the American stores, and Burgoyne might have been relieved. The inquiry has often been made why this unnecessary delay, but no other answer can be given than this: it was the special providence of God. The army of General Burgoyne was marched directly to Boston, where they were detained as prisoners of war. Having thus restored tranquility in the north, the army under General Gates marched to support General Putnam at Kingston and guard the country from the excursions of the British. The alarm was taken, and the enemy hastened back to New York. We will now take a look at the transactions of the conquering army of New York. About the time that victory perched on the British standard on Lake Champlain, under the direction of Burgoyne, General Howe embarked with about 16,000 troops with 260 sail, and on the 23rd of July went to sea on a private expedition to make a diversion at the south. General Washington then made a movement towards Delaware, that he might cover Philadelphia. General Howe maneuvered on the coast some days and finally entered the Chesapeake. Washington advanced to meet him. The British troops were landed at Elk River Ferry, and the two armies met at Chad's Ford on the Brandywine, where an action was fought on the 11th of September. Victory declared for the English, and Washington retired to the high grounds to watch the enemy. Philadelphia was entered on the 26th, when Congress retired to Lancaster. About this time, the Marquis Lafayette arrived. We're on page 193. Arrived. United States and tendered his services to Congress, and he received a commission as brigadier general in the service. He joined the army and served at his own expense, and soon became the companion and the friend of Washington. His talents as a soldier were first displayed at Chad's Ford, where he received a wound in the leg, the effects which he still carries. The Count Pulaski, Polish gentleman, also distinguished himself in the battle and was honored with the commission of Major General. So I think the times today that we have, with almost 40,000 armed forces from different cities in America and states that have met in the rotunda of the capital, of the state capital of Virginia, the capital of Washington, D.C., I think it just seems like they're going to go ahead and, bring in the armed forces that have or hold commanding officers' positions are going to be the new government of the United States of America. And I know today is January 18th, 2021, and I really believe this to be true, that we're going to see great and positive Republic reality that's forthcoming to help save this great nation of sovereignty and human rights. I really believe that this is going to be what's occurring in our reality of America. So we'll see. But I have a great feeling after reviewing and researching, and I tell you what, I feel a little sun-dazed. See my little note that I found? I'm sun-dazed. I am sun-dazed. I'm hypnotized by the lights for freedom. So I hope that that will happen. I can't see a congressional group of people that can't agree and that show ineptness and unintelligence leading our country forward. It's just not going to happen. There's just too many wishy-washy people holding office in the House and the Senate. And again, they made a big mistake by having extended term limits, and they have profit on the back of our peoples in America, and they have done us a big disservice. Our country is, on our knees, basically, with, basic survival. So I don't know, but this video is going out tonight, and here we have the numbers down here. 341 Cause Humanity, and I think that numbers are really important to the rules of law. And so I watched Tom Fitton on Judicial Watch, And he talks about the rule of law. You know, I mean, that's our foundation. The rule of law. So we need to abide by it to be a successful country. We have to abide by the laws of our nation. So I don't have a script for my program, so just enjoy. I want to read. And so we're on page, we just finished, we're on the top of 194, and I finished the first paragraph, and I finished off with the Count Pulaski, a Polish gentleman, also distinguished himself in the battle and was honored with the commission of Major General. So all my thoughts and prayers for all the armed forces that are meeting at the Rotunda on Capitol Hill, Washington, D.C. Much success and safety and well-being for all. And I'm a big history buff. This is Fort Ligonier, and that's Hannah's town. But I love history. I'm a Civil War reenactor too. So I have a lot of pictures on my picture show, on American history, and I have toured all of Washington, D.C. and ate at the Brady's Cafeteria on Capitol Hill. So my sister worked for Senator Dole on Capitol Hill, and that's one thing for sure. Okay, we might feel overwhelmed at the moment with, you know, news of outrage and despicableness of the way that House and Senate members are acting and behaving. But believe me, they know 6 months to 2 years in advance what is going on. So we're the last ones. The average American citizen is the last one to know what's really going on. So that's why you can't be fooled by what they say and how they behave, because they know firsthand what is revolving in hearsay and news that's current. They know. Okay, so we have to keep working at our best in our home lives and protecting our families. So also look into alternative news like H.A. Goodman, Next News Network, Dustin Nemos, Julie on You Are Free TV, and also Snafu Radio. He's a new one that I'm listening to now. But again, everybody knows the ones that are working at the Capitol. They know all the behind the scenes conspiracies, medlem of war. There's the Soldiers and Sailor building. That's in Pittsburgh. That's a ball.